Hey there, welcome back to Schullights. Today we're going to be talking about ordering your first D4V2 or other flashlight like that. So you're online, you see one of these hot rod flashlights, you hit the website, and then you're just inundated with options, don't know what to get. It's confusing, so let's do this. First, go to your website. Go to internationaloutdoor.com. And let me pause and just talk about that for a second. There's a lot of confusion, just even about the branding, because the website's called internationaloutdoor.com, but then, the flashlights are sometimes called Noctagon, MSR, D4V2. It's just, there's a lot of jargon. So let's take a look first at just what kind of lights we got. And then after you take a look at the options of lights, we're going to look at, ordering like a D4V2 and talk about the various options. Okay. So it's kind of a two-part video. So the first thing I want to mention is when I first ordered my first Hank light, that's what I'm going to call them, I was very confused about the difference between a KR1 and a K4. Like, is K4 four times bigger than, or four times better than a K1? Okay, so first off, let's just mention that the number often means how many emitters. So for example, right now, there's a little splash screen up here and it says Noctagon K9.3. And the reason it says that is because this is a 9 emitter flashlight with 3 secondary emitters around it. So that's why the 9.3. So that's your first thing. If it says, a D4, for example, that would be a 4 emitter light. If it says DT8, that'd be an 8 emitter light, okay? So the common lights that people get is they'll get like an EDC light, like a small light, and typically people get the D4V2. This is probably the most common, ubiquitous of his lights. It's an amazing light, much smaller than it looks in the pictures. And in part 2, when we go through ordering one, I'm going to order a kind of a cousin light to this. I'm going to order the... Well, actually, no. Let's order the D4V2. I was going to do the KR4, which is very similar, but it's a tail version. But let's do the D4, because that's what most people are looking for. But let me mention that if you're getting a small EDC light, that the D4V2 is what you want. If you want a small thrower, you want, and I don't see it on the page here. Let's go to LED flashlights. Here we go. You want the KR1, okay? This KR1 is about the same size, and it has a single emitter in the middle of it and a reflector, and this guy's a thrower, okay? So EDC size, you got the D4V2 and the KR1. Those are the two you want. Now, if you want, let me just backtrack for a second here and say that if you want a D4V2 style light, but you want it with the tail switch, that's what the KR4 is. And that's why it's kind of confusing, the names, because KR4 and KR1 sound really similar, and they're completely different lights. KR4 is a floody EDC light, and a KR1 is a thrower kind of EDC light. So I hope that helps. Now let's see, you want to look for something a little bit bigger, okay? Well, actually, before we get off that, let's look at the DT8. DT8 is the smallest, most pocketable powerhouse you can get. This thing is just a little bit wider than a D4, but it's got 8 LEDs in it of your choice. So there's a lot of light coming out of this guy. Now, let's take a look at some other options. If you want something a little bigger, you could go for the D4SV2. Where's that guy? There it is. This one is still pocketable, but kind of on the edge of. This is probably how big you imagine the D4V2 is, if you've never seen one. You can look up, other videos to see exactly how big it is. Don't get me wrong, this is not a big flashlight, but when I ordered my first D4V2, I thought it was going to be as big as the D4SV2 is. So when you first get your D4, you look at it and go, wow, it's tiny. And then you get a D4S and you go, okay, this is what I thought the D4 was going to be. Now, why would you get this one? Well, bigger battery, more thermal mass, bigger optics. And that last one's big. Bigger optics means more throw. So if you want something kind of throwy, this is the one to get. Definitely not a thrower, but more throwy. Now, if you want a large thrower, the choice is clear. You want the K1. Okay, so this would be like the big brother to the KR1. This is a much bigger flashlight, not pocketable. It's handheld, but it's a large flashlight, and this thing really throws. Huge reflector. Get like an Osram in here if you want Osram W1, and that thing will go so far. Okay, so that's a really good option. Let's fish out a couple more lights here. Let's talk about a medium range thrower. This is a brand new light to his lineup. It's called the DM11. This uses a TIR, total internal reflection optic, instead of a reflector. It doesn't throw quite as far as the K1, but it's definitely a thrower. It's got a really clean beam. Love it. And it's much smaller than the K1. So if you want to give up a little throw, it's definitely a thrower. But if you want to give up a little throw to have a smaller size and then get like, the auxiliary secondary lights, the ones that blink or show the, voltage of the battery by color. This allows for that. Whereas with the reflector on the K1, you don't have that as an option. And also there's some cool high CRI options in the DM11, meaning that you can pick some LEDs like this new B35AMs, and these guys are all high CRI, okay? I haven't really gotten to the emitters yet, and we'll get a little bit more into emitters on the second part. I'm not going to cover everything that Hank sells. I just can't. But we're giving you a little survey here. Now, we talked about EDCs. We talked about throwers. Let's talk about flutters. So that's where we go to the D18 here. The D18 is kind of a very small, diminutive soda can light. It is a soda can light, but it's on the smaller end of it. And it's got 18 emitters of your choice. And it's really bright. It's a great value at $99. And another interesting thing about the D18 is not only can you put in, the emitters listed here, but you can practically put in any 35-35 emitter you want, or even the 30-30 emitters. So you can contact Hank and say, hey, can you give me these on the inside, these on the outside. It's a single channel light, meaning they all just turn on at once and dim at once. But sometimes, you can get some throwy center emitters and then some floody outer emitters, things like that. We'll get into custom orders at the end of the video. Okay. So let's see here. I think I pretty much covered the main stuff here. I mean, I didn't cover metals. You can get stuff in copper if you want, or brass, things like that. That's just kind of a preference thing. For the most part, aluminum is a great metal. For your first lights, I'd definitely go aluminum. Great heat transfer, lightweight. It's just a great metal for flashlights. You want to go, geek cred and get titanium, you can, but it's terrible thermally. And it costs more. So, yeah, I think we got all the lights. I'm just kind of looking over the website. Yeah, we got it. Okay, so now we're entering second part here. So you want to order your first light. And I'm going to choose the D4 here. Let's get the D4 in aluminum. Where is it? D4 in aluminum. There it is, way at the bottom. Now, one thing I'm going to mention, since this is an introductory video, I'm going to point out that there's these brand new dual channel lights that he's offering. I'm not covering that. Okay, if you already know that you're into a dual channel light, you probably know more than I'm covering in this video. This is really for the newbies that have never ordered one. So we're just going to talk about ordering a light where you pick the emitters and, it just comes on. We're not going to, switch emitters or anything fancy like that. Okay, so you're here. First thing you want to do is pick the color. Okay, I'm in the aluminum. So we got some color options: black, gray, sand, cyan. Cyan's really pretty. If you haven't seen his cyan yet, it's a fan favorite. The sand looks more like gold in person, and it looks really very similar to what it looks like on screen here. The gray is a very dark gray, and it varies from shipment to shipment. Sometimes it's a neutral dark gray. Sometimes it's kind of a bluish, coolish dark gray. And the black is a really nice black, okay? The color doesn't matter to the performance of light. It's just what you want. So I'll just pick cyan, okay? And that doesn't change the price of the light as well. Now, retaining ring, unless you have a good reason not to do so, I would get the raised version. every time. What raised version is there's this little, let's see here. There's this right here, this little kind of ring around it. And what it does is it protects the rubber boot from being worn down in your pocket, and it actually prevents accidental activation. That's not to say that you couldn't. Some people do have these things turn on in their pocket, and that's why you would mechanically lock out at the bottom, or 4 buttons on end durial to lock it out. But I'm a big fan of raised. Okay, it doesn't cost any extra. Just get it. Now, this is where it gets a little strange down here. So LED and tint. Now he's got a pull down here, and you can see that some options, if you select them, it's going to cost a few dollars more. There's actually even a secret menu, okay? Meaning that there's some LEDs that are not listed on his pull down that he might have in stock. I'm going to tell you right now that what you should do in a situation like that, if you want one of those, is I would order the closest thing I could, and then once I've already paid, I know this seems weird, but once you're paid through PayPal and everything, you get your order number, then send an email to Hank at contact@international-outdoor.com and say, here's my order number. Can you please make it like this, right? Please give it this emitter, or please do this thing to it. And he will tell you, yeah, I can do that. Or he'll say, please send $10 more. Please send whatever dollars more. And then you PayPal separately, and he'll ship it to you. All right, that's the way to do it. Don't worry about like trying to get it, configured first. Just do the best you can on here. Then tell him what you want. He'll make it happen. Oh, also note that you got like a little order history up here. It will not show those changes that you add by mail. He'll get it right, but just know that that's the way he does it. It never shows in the order system here. So let's take a look at these LEDs really quick. If you don't know the LED you want, I highly suggest SST 4000 95 CRI. Okay, it's pretty throwy, gets really bright. It's a really neutral tint, kind of a little on the little warm side of neutral. I mean, I would say daylight's 5000K and it's 4000, so it looks great at night, looks great in the day, and it's very high CRI. There's just not much bad to say about it. It's very neutral. Sometimes people claim that they're green, but honestly, the ones that I get from Hank, I've measured them on my Sekonic C800U, and they are dead on, 0 on the Delta UV. So they're very neutral. So that's what I'd get. Now, if you wanted, something warmer for at night, then maybe you would go with like an E21A, like, maybe a 2700 here. That's what I would go for at night. I think the 3500 is a little warmer, but it's not like what you want for, nighttime use. I'd say the 2700 is better. And if you want something that looks like a candle, so not like incandescent light, but a candle, go the 2000. Okay, those are my tips. You do an astro work, maybe, astronomy. You want the deep red then for preserving your rhodopsin in your eyes and your scotopic vision. Okay. Another emitter that I should definitely talk about is the Nichia 219B. It's a legendary emitter, and especially this one right here, the Nichia 219 4500K. This one is legendary because it's not as bright as the SST 20, but it's brighter than the E21A. And it's really rosy. So if you like the idea of kind of like a rose-colored light, no green tint at all, then this one is a really good one. And it's pretty, daylighty. 4500 is pretty close to daylight, so it looks nice. If you were thinking of getting a warm night light and you didn't care as much about extreme high CRI, I mentioned these before, the E21As, I would probably get this one here. This is an Nichia 219B 2700. I love that emitter. It's very warm. It's rosy. It gets brighter than the E21As. The CRI is still quite high, really high. Not as high as E21As. The E20As are king for high CRI. These things are, I'm being a little hyperbolous here, but they're practically tungsten high in color rendition index. So And then the last thing, I guess the last natural white emitter I should talk about is probably the XPL highs. XPL highs basically are what you're going to get if you want output. You just want as much light as possible, and you don't care about the CRI as much. They're not low CRI; they're about 80. But if you just don't care about if colors pop quite as much, this one that I'm hovering over is a great option. It gets really bright. In the D4V2 that I have, I got this exact emitter, this V2 5D here. Well, it's actually the one I have. There's binning underneath this. I don't want to get too technical here, but I have the 5A4 bin version of it, and my D4 puts out 4,000 lumens for a moment, and then it drops down to about 3,500 pretty rapidly. But that's insane. 4,000 lumens in a flashlight this small. So if you want output, XPL high is the way to go. There's also some UV options here, and he includes that black light filter, the ZWB2. So that's awesome that it includes that. And lastly, you get some Osram W1, W2s here. I don't think they have great synergy with the D4 personally. If you wanted something that was throwy, I would go to the Care one. So I would ignore these for the D4. So for today, let's, again, if you don't know what you want, I would probably choose the SST20 4000K. So let's just choose that. Now, these options are sometimes confusing, so let's go over them. The optic it's going to come with is typically the 10622 optic, and it's not ultra narrow, but it's standard. It's standard narrow, okay? And it's not milky. It's clear. If you go extra floody optic like this wording is weird, but he's going to put a kind of a, milky, frosted, I should say, frosted, floodier optic in the box also. So you're going to end up with two optics. So if you don't check this, but you just want that floodier optic, like on the flashlight, I would order it without this checked and then tell him in the email, please give me the 10623. And then he'll just do that. He'll just give you that optic and it won't cost any extra money, okay? But if you want both, because they're easy to swap out, you just kind of, take off the bezel and then pull one out, put the other one in. This would give you an extra in the box, okay? Right here, this says stainless steel bezel. I think this is a must, okay? These right here are the stainless steel bezels. These are the aluminum. The reason why you want stainless steel is not for looks. It's for dropping it, okay? You drop it and it hits flat, you're good. You drop it, it hits the tail cap, you get a small little dent, but it's just a tail cap, who cares, it's gonna work. You drop it and it hits the front end. This aluminum is so soft that it's gonna immediately dent in, probably crack the glass. It's bad. So get that stainless steel. I've dropped them. You get a little scratch on the end and then it usually survives, okay? 18500 tube, 18350 tube. I usually don't get these. You can if you want a little shorty like back here. But honestly, I think the light kind of has a better balance and has a way better runtime and even higher lumens on the 18650 with the SST20, definitely. Okay, so I would say probably don't get the tubes. Pocket clip, I wouldn't get the pocket clip. You know why? It stinks. It's not very good. If you want a pocket clip for your D4, save your money. Go get something else. Search our flashlight and look for an option. I personally like the Olight M2R. I'm sorry, M2R clip. You do have to grind like the arms a little bit, but I think it's so much better. Now, let's go down here, magnet and tail cap. So if you click this, he's going to put a magnet in the tail cap. It won't change the way it looks or anything, but now you can stick the light to metallic surfaces. I love it. I put it in all my lights. So I think that's a great thing. Now, see this thing where it says extra tail cap without magnet? That means he will literally give you an extra tail cap so that you can have a magnet or not have a magnet. So that's confusing. If you just want a tail cap and no magnet, don't check anything. You want a magnet, check that. I don't think you ever want to check this, that he would give you an extra tail cap. And then this right here, again, you don't need this. This is only if you don't have a battery charger, because there's no charging port on this light. But this is not a high quality charger. I wouldn't get it. Okay, I think we got through the options. That was pretty fast. Anything else I would say about the D4V2? Yes. Yes, here's something I would say. By default, if you don't say anything, he's going to give you this black button here, and it's fine. But he will upgrade you to a white button that's lit at no extra cost. So if you want to email him and say, hey, give me a cyan lit button or a warm white button, and the colors off the top of my head are cool white, warm white, amber, red, green, cyan. He's had a couple other colors, in the past, like purple and stuff like that, but I don't think he offers them anymore. Purple is really dim anyways. But those three, the three that I would mainly go with is either cool white, the warm white, and amber, and they go warmer in the exact direction I just mentioned. So amber, it's not orangey, it's kind of amber. It's kind of like a really warm white. So I like those three the most. Let's see here. You know what? I'm going to just pop out for 1 second. If you've been watching this far, then you definitely like what I'm talking about. Let's just do this. This is the KR1. Well, instead of KR1, let me go KR4. KR4, because the KR4 is the sister. Let me find aluminum. There we go. KR4 is the sister light to the D4V2. It's about the same size, about the same dimensions. The difference is it's a tail switch. The performance on the optics are identical. It's identical optics and everything. But what I wanted to show you is that you've got this thing called tail cap options here. And if you click it, you can get something with a trit or without a trit slot. At first, I had no idea what this is. Trit is short for tritium. And basically, the button on the back there can have a little trough, a little tiny kind of drilled out part where you can then optionally buy from some other vendor a little self-luminous, kind of, radioactive but not harmful to you, tube that glows for 10, 15 years. And you can just drop it in there, put some UV resin over it. And I have another video on about that, actually. You can look up on my, look above right now. I'll have a link to what trit slots are like and how you put trit slots or trit tubes into the slot. So that's what this is. I personally always get it with the trit slot because even if I'm not going to fill it, I might sell the light later, and people usually like this thing. There's been some scuttlebutt about whether, having it with or without the trit slot changes the action to the button. I can tell you that's not true. It doesn't change the action to the button at all. The button, sometimes they come out really great, sometimes kind of wonky. It mostly has to do with the metal of the light. The aluminum ones are usually really good. I find the titanium KR4s and are kind of grindy. But there's some mods and about that too. And if you look on my channel, I've got a KR4 / KR1 button fix tutorial, which I can tell you kind of how to improve it. All right, so let's say, I think we covered everything I intended to cover. We covered a basic survey of his lights, covered the ordering options, and we covered custom orders and emailing him. So I would order first, buy it, then email him. All right, hope that was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And you know what? In the comments, hit me up with, what kind of videos you'd like to see. I hope this is helpful to newbies looking for their first D4V2 from Hank Wang.